Good afternoon or morning, and welcome to today's edition of XenTegra's Webinar Wednesday. Today we are joined by Rimo3. They're here to discuss automated Windows application readiness testing. Real quick, before we get started, just a quick intro. My name is Randy Price. I will be your host today. I live outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. I have been in the end user compute space for, I'd say, 20 plus years. I've been with XenTegra for over 5 years. And if you've ever had an opportunity to engage in one of our Citrix or VMware complementary assessments, there's a good chance I was involved. If you're not familiar with those, I'd love to tell you more about it. And I'll bring that up here momentarily. Again, for those of you that are not familiar with XenTegra, we are a national reseller. We invest heavily in our partnerships and the end user community. We provide expert services along with carefully selected products and customer enablement with events, workshops, and webinars such as this one. Wherever you are on your digital transformation journey, we can help you on your path to being successful. This is Andy Whiteside. He's our founder and CEO. Andy founded XenTegra on the principle of serving the end user community, which we continue to do today. XenTegra is a value-added reseller, providing consulting services regardless of how big or small the client base may be. We also provide managed services to help support and manage your digital workspace environment. And again, I kind of mentioned already the fact that we do offer these complimentary assessments. If you haven't taken advantage of one of these, I highly encourage you to do so. These are an assessment up to 4 hours where you will work with one of our subject matter experts and essentially perform a SWOT analysis of your environment, whether that be Citrix, VMware, it could be Agile, Nutanix, and so forth. These assessments are provided at no cost. Again, follow up with us after this session if you're interested. And with that, I'm going to hush and turn it right over to Rimo3 and let them introduce themselves as we discuss our topic for today. Again, automated Windows application readiness testing. We'll stop sharing, and Josh, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. Let's go ahead and share out my screen. Okay, fantastic. Well, thanks again, Randy, and thanks in advance to the attendees today. Today, we're going to dive into the Rimo3 technology and really just talk about the types of challenges that automation can bring into your organization. However, we will be giving away a $100 Amazon gift card at the end of the webinar. We have some rules of engagement here. In order to be eligible to be entered into the draw for the gift card, you must participate. We'll be throwing up some slides with some questions, and we ask that you provide some information, some answers to those questions directly in the chat. The team here will be monitoring it and identifying those that are participating and eligible for the draw. Those names will then be entered into the wheel of names and be, again, randomly selected. So again, you must participate in order to be eligible for the Amazon gift card. Let's go ahead and jump in and really just wanted to provide some information around who Rimo3 is. The technology itself at its core competencies, what we do is we do unattended, automated, intelligent testing of your applications. And I'll talk through exactly what that means, but we're introducing a very innovative dynamic testing approach for all of your Windows-based applications on a variety of different platforms. In terms of the company history, we were founded in 2019. However, our executive leadership team collectively have hundreds of years in the application space. If you're familiar with a technology called AppDNA, our CTO as well as our CEO rather were the principals of that organization, which later got acquired by Citrix. Then on the sales and marketing side, in terms of the CRO and CMO, they were also the key executives in a technology you also may be familiar with, such as FS Logic. We do have a global presence. And as you can see from our strategic technology alliances through Microsoft, Citrix, NetApp, VMware, it allows us to expand our global reach. One strategic partnership here I'd like to call out is NetApp. And if you're familiar with their Spot PC offering that just launched and went GA recently, we partnered with NetApp early, and essentially they're embedding the Rimo3 technology into their managed PC offering to ensure that the applications are being delivered as expected. So we're very excited about that partnership and seeing some really good things. And then, of course, below, just some sample strategic customers of ours that we're helping with the value that Rimo3 brings. So, the first area, really, the number one challenge that the Rimo3 technology through the automated application testing, what it's solving for is manual effort or the challenges that manual testing brings. And if you're not familiar with that, there's a couple key areas to focus in on. Obviously, time, right? Human capital investment. Time equals money. The really only other way to test applications of what Rimo3 can bring is to, again, have a human sit down and go through that testing. Now, with everything, we introduce the element of human error, right? Will it get done? Will it get done correctly? Is something get missed in emails, communications, right? All of that gets incorporated into the manual testing challenges. As well as the cadence or intervals, rather, that it's humanly possible to test the applications on. As you'll see when we work through the technology, change is inevitable in your environment, right? And that could potentially impact your applications, not just on the negative side as well, but when you're upgrading or you're migrating to a cloud platform or virtualization technology, et cetera, it could potentially improve or provide a positive impact for those changes as well. And then, of course, right, with turnovers, switching of roles, it's really hard to get that breadcrumb trail of those applications from their inception or introduction into the organization to their current state. And we do see that a lot with applications, a lot of legacy technical debt. So queue up automation. And we do have a lot of good market data that supports that organizations that choose intelligent automation or to invest in intelligent automation really mitigate and manage risk more effectively. And that risk, a lot of the times when we think of risk, we think of security only. However, that risk can be managed in the context of productivity, in the context of reduction of volume in the service desks and overall user satisfaction. The other point to make about the automation concept is that we're now leveraging compute to execute on this automation. So now, that 9 to 5 or 8 hour day, manual day, now becomes a 24/7 concept when you're leveraging compute. And what you'll see here, just from some sample sets of data, is that it drastically, when we talk about manual testing versus automatic testing, automated testing is able to accomplish the result in a fraction of that time. I'd like to queue up our first question, and this is for the audience. If you could then answer in the chat if you're currently planning or executing on a Windows operating system within your environment, and this could be any upgrade. Even if you're patching, you're getting ready for a feature release, Windows 10, Windows 11, server-based operating systems, whatever you're working with on a daily basis, those OSs that host your applications. If you could just communicate in the chat if you currently are, because I think some of the things that we'll show today will provide some interesting items on these upgrades or changes to those OSs. So we talked a little bit about the manual versus automated. And then if we actually drill down a layer, we can now start to educate on some of the challenges when it relates to application specifically. Now, these application challenges are very common. We at Rimo3, live the application world, and we see these every day. One, of course, application compatibility. And again, you have to take into consideration when looking at application compatibility, your unique applications. And these could be homegrown apps that are, again, unique to only your organization. They could even potentially be COTS, commercial off-the-shelf applications that you've packaged or you virtualized, you've patched. Again, what that's doing is fundamentally changing how that application interacts with that operating environment, and it's making it unique. So therefore, if that app is a commercial app and it sits on a whitelist or it's certified on a certain version of Windows, we would challenge you to ask yourself, well, is my packaged application certified to run on my configured version of Windows? Two distinctly different things, and we'll also talk through those through the demonstration as well. When you are moving to modern workspaces or changing the existing workspaces, how are you proactively identifying any performance impact on those applications? Again, we always look at performance as or impact as negative. It potentially could be positive as well if you're modernizing the application packages, the delivery mechanism, and then resource utilization as well. Now, not specifically CPU, network, RAM, of course, we take those into consideration when we look at performance, but this is internal SME resources, application owners, developers that you may be pulling from or maybe being pulled from their day job in order to assist in troubleshooting or provide context around some complex things. And then of course, as we mentioned before, manual testing, right? Because it's so time consuming, we can always correlate dollars to time. Are the applications being tested to the level that you need in order to support that change at the pace that it's coming? So time for our second question. This is really a two-parter, understanding these are both new technologies. So we added in two here. If you are currently exploring or perhaps you're even using MSIX, Modern Application Packaging Technology from Microsoft, trying to achieve app attach, or if you're currently planning or managing an Intune instance for application management. The two are somewhat connected. Even if you haven't begun yet and you are looking at modernized application technology, please do let us know in the chat as we work through the presentation here. So now we're going to get into the technology stack itself. Now, because it is, once you boil down the Rimo3 software, at its core, it's a very robust automation and orchestration engine. And I always like to share the high-level architecture because this provides really a window into what that automation looks like. And we'll move from the left to right here, but we do have flexible deployment methods. However, our most common is a cloud deployment. Our cloud provider is Microsoft Azure, naturally because of the Windows 365 world, the Azure Virtual Desktop world, the Intune world. Microsoft is deeply entrenched in the application space. However, what you're seeing on the left-hand side here is the Rimo3 platform. Now we host this. What it is it's a web host that provides an interactive web portal for our users to interact with the software. And then we host a database as well. And the only things that we're storing in this database are application metadata, as well as application testing results. Then what we do is we link to our customer's cloud environment. And the reason why we do this is because I mentioned before that you have your unique application sets. You also have your unique operating environment sets as well. And by us linking into your environment, it enables us to provide or to support what we define as contextual relevance. So it completes that story of we're able to test your applications against your unique and configured operating environments. And this linking between environments is the way that we accomplish this. In terms of resources, we deploy a secure mid-server gateway that acts as a secure communications broker to our space into yours. It also orchestrates all of what we define as task runners. And what these are virtual environments, and they depend on what your test cases look like. Are you going from Windows 10 to Windows 11? We would need a Windows 10 task runner, a Windows 11, server 2012, 2016 to 2019, 2022. That's what those task runners represent there, is that virtual environment that we're utilizing in order to provide the analysis. Linking into your environment, what that also allows for is that network connectivity. A lot of applications are heavily dependent on back-end resources. These resources, common examples are license servers, databases for authentication. Again, because we're now linked within that environment, we're able to access those back-end resources. What it also enables for as well is all of the testing machines to be linked directly to your domain. So now we can start to include GPOs. So anytime a GPO is updated, your security posture, antivirus, all of that stuff, again, that's behind your firewall, that could potentially impact that application should you change it over time. A lot of the times we talk to customers and that's the number one reason why they're not upgrading or changing, because the risk of it potentially breaking something or negatively impacting. No one ever looks at the positive side. And then lastly, we provide or provision a storage account within your environment. And that's so that we can maintain a high level of data privacy, where your packages, your applications physically never leave your premise. What it also does too is any outputs that we're providing, which we'll walk through in detail, it ensures that that never leaves your premise either. So very simple architecture diagram, but it was a very hard thought out conscious decision in terms of the architecture, because again, of the security as well as the efficiency to execute on the automations and orchestrations. Now for our last question, the bonus question, if you are actively involved, supporting, managing, delivering, deploying anything around applications, we would love it if you were to share with us what your number one challenge is in the realm of applications. It could be anything. We could get extremely creative here. It could keep you up at night. It could be a simple annoyance. Please let us know within the chat for some bonus points for our Amazon gift card giveaway. With that, and by all means as well, if there are any other questions outside of the ones that we have asked, please feel free to use the chat, and team monitoring, feel free to interrupt me at the appropriate points, and we can field those questions. Fantastic. So what I'll do now is I'll transition over to the actual technology itself, and where we are we're at step one of the Rimo3 platform onboarding experience. And as I mentioned before, we need to tell or point Rimo3 to what our test cases are, where we're pointing to. This is exactly what it is. It's a hand-holding GUI experience. Because our entire process is automated and 100% unattended, we want as little as human involvement as possible. So we're simply just guiding through. What are we testing our applications against, right? Is it a migration operating system suitability analysis, right? Are we upgrading operating systems? Are we looking at modernizing those application packages themselves? Are we looking at transforming it into MSIX, investigating app attach? Perhaps we're looking at, Windows 365, Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows 11 Enterprise. There's so many different permutations and so much choice out there. We're just, again, walking through, and this is where you're selecting those operating images. And we do support a mix of vanilla. A lot of the times we work with customers that they don't have that Windows 11 or that Server 2022 custom gold image built out yet. However, they still want to run a quick suitability analysis. We do support the ability to pull down that vanilla image. But then again, as I mentioned, we also support the ability to import your custom images with all of your configuration sets, etc. So we always want to understand, for comparative analysis purposes, where you currently are today and where you would like to get to tomorrow. After we do make those selections, what we're then able to do is tell the Rimo3 platform exactly what virtual environments it's going to need to orchestrate. right? So for our first example, I'll look at a server-based migration. We do a lot of activity with Citrix-based customers, and a lot of them are going through upgrades currently. So again, in our use case, just for navigation, our current operating environment is Server 2012, and we're going to look at how our applications will be impacted on Server 2022. Now, what you're seeing here is the result of applications that have already been onboarded, but we'll talk through the process of, kind of that step 1B. Step 1A would be, let's point Rimo3 to our operating systems. Step 1B is, let's now import those packages themselves. So the most common method, if you are using SCCM for your management plane, we offer out-of-the-box integrations into SCCM, where we can hook in and automatically pull that entire application portfolio into our platform. The advantage of this is, one, it's an automated way of getting the applications into the platform. Two, a lot of the times by doing this, and I'll show in a moment here, we're able to filter out kind of that technical debt of those applications that may not be used and they're still under management as well. What it also does is it allows us to import all of the years of logic that those applications have packaged inside them. I mentioned before, they could have been, shimmed, they might have been virtualized, they're scripted, they have dependencies. We want to understand as much as possible for those applications. So the path of least resistance, of course, is a common management plane like SCCM. However, it's not the only way. Understanding not all applications are managed in SCCM, we do have a variety of import mechanisms where we can, just drag and drop. We can point towards file repositories and upload in batch zip files. Or for those, more complex applications that have a tremendous amount of moving parts, they may be batch files that call command files, that call PowerShell packages. We have a support kind of catch-all mechanism for that as well. Now, after you import those application packages, you start to get an idea of where you sit. So what you'll see here is I can see what I was successfully able to onboard, what actually failed. We determine, things like shortcuts, discoveries, etc. The most important thing of the import process, and this is where the intelligent automation starts to kick in, is Rimo3 is doing a deep-rooted discovery on the application packages as it imports them. So what that means, really, to simplify it, is it's extracting as much data as possible from that application to understand at its core how that app was intended to interact on that operating system. So what we're doing is we're pulling out the application metadata to help with versioning, to help with manufacturing details, etc. But then we start to get into the inner workings of the application itself. These are the core executables, the shortcuts that have been added to launch those executables. Once those executables launch, we're capturing the child processes that get spawned as a result of those executables launching, and then any other service information or registry updates that might be vital for that application's functionality. So again, this is the Rimo3 discovery process, and this is the first stage of building the intelligence in that automated pipeline. So if I transition over and look at the suitability analysis, all of that discovered data is dynamically injected on the fly based off of our test case. And this is extremely dynamic and innovative. If you're familiar with traditional automated smoke testing, for example, if you're familiar with AppDNA, that was a fantastic solution. It was based on static analysis, right? I have a static list of rules, and then I extract data and I try to match up those rules together to see if I catch anything. That was a very viable approach at the time. However, due to the evolution of technology, really, the speed of change, the rate of change rather, and the selection of the types of changes, what happened, unfortunately, is that it became such an overhead to maintain that static set of rule set that it essentially deflated the value that that automation and static analysis could bring. So within Rimo3, we're positioning dynamic analysis, where you do not need to know any prerequisite information of the application, how it functions. You just need to know where it exists, how it installs. And then through the intelligence of Rimo3, we're uncovering that for you. We're building that profile in the platform, and we're dynamically testing all of those items that I previously showed. Now, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to test it against that current environment that we told Rimo3 about in that first stage. And a very common question I get is, well, we don't need to test for compatibility. We know that it works. We have, tens of thousands of users using these applications in production today. And that is true. Why we're testing against the current environment is because we want a baseline of what good looks like, so we can build off that, so that we can get very finite pieces of information once we change that baseline environment. So that's the sole purpose of why we're executing that on the current environment. Then we capture that result, we store that result, and we move on to that changed environment, in our case, the target environment. And again, the entire process is automated. So what I'm going to do here is double click in just to provide a window into that automated sequence. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to spin up that virtual environment. So in our case, it's a 2022 build of Windows Server. After we've spun that environment up, we're going to install the application. This is a very important validation check, because if you look at, UAT automation solutions, or you look at digital experience automation solutions, they're making the assumption that the application is already installed, right? They're monitoring production environments. With Rimo3, think of us as a step before that, where we're validating that that the application will run, but we're also validating that the application will deploy as expected on that target or changed environment. Then we're testing the application. So again, completely dependent on what was discovered through that intelligent discovery. We're testing that on the fly. Then we're going to uninstall that application, and we're going to deprovision that virtual environment to maximize compute. Now, the entire time, we're providing that log level view of exactly what's going on, as you can see in the console here. What we're also doing is we're capturing video of the entire sequence so that you can play that back in real time, as well as capturing static screenshots when activities happen. And this is very complementary to that log level data, so you can get in and see what's going on, because again, it is all automated. And then lastly, but not least, we're capturing key performance metrics in isolation. And what I mean by that is we're not looking at anything else that's going on the build. We're laser focused on that application and what it's doing through our automated pipeline here. And we're answering a very complex question very simply. In our case here, if I were to take Premium Insights, move it from that 2012 environment, move it on to my 2022 environment, is it going to impact the deployment installation? Is it going to impact the core functionality? And is it going to impact performance? And if so, is it positive, negative? And where on these resources can I draw the attention to? So again, the end result within Rimo3, the automation orchestration is fantastic, but we're providing that end result, which is informative data insights. That's a product of automation in a fraction of the time and cost that you could accomplish it, comparatively speaking, which again is that manual effort.
Hey, Josh, quick question for you. On the application installations that you guys are performing, when you're going through these smoke tests, are you guys installing each app individually, uninstalling, or do you guys also perform compatibility between applications?
Great question. Yeah, great question. So it really all depends. So we import the packages individually. However, if that package has 5 or 6 different apps, then we will install anything that's in the sequence, right? That's the one requirement for Rimo3 is you need to tell it how to install those packages. Now, that's one scenario. So let's say my Ultramon application here, it requires a version of Java, it requires .NET, and it requires another runtime. There's 2 ways that this is accomplished. One, the magic wand scenario way, where Ultramon has all of that in one single package, and there's a logic script that tells you how to do it. Most commonly, that's not the case. So what we can provide there is, let's say that this was reliant on a runtime such as Java. We would run the initial analysis. We would identify a failure because it's looking for something. And then what we then allow you to do is, again, we'll bring that failure to the forefront. And then what you can do is you can come in and add that dependency and rinse and repeat that automation so that you can get an accurate result on the end. The other way, and kind of flip it around, if you will, is that because we do support custom images to test against, a lot of the times our customers have a baseline image with their preferred version of .NET, with their preferred version of Java, etc., right? Their antivirus, those things that get deployed that they can't attach or use roaming profiles for. So again, if that's in the context of our testing, absolutely we'll identify that. And then again, as mentioned, we'll call out those failures and bring those to the forefront.
How about in that same sort of scenario, if I've got let's call it a custom image, right, where I have a baseline image, I've already went through, I've tested these apps, and getting ready to install or add an additional application in my environment, can I use a custom image to, say, for example, have Google Chrome, Ultramon, and then as part of that custom image, and then have another app, my net new app that I'm providing, just kind of test, one, does it install, as well as compatibility?
Absolutely. 100% full control on the custom images, as well as what applications to be included in the test case.
That's great. That's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great questions. Please do keep them coming. So as we walk through the operational workflow of that automated sequence, right, the result, as I talked about, which is the true value, is what you end up with is a living, breathing representation of your most current change in your environment as it relates to your application estate. Now, these become live reports. We do have mechanisms of exporting the data out to common business tools like Excel. We have an entire integration fabric, which is a RESTful API that can pull data. It can automate activities within the platform. However, what we promote is the living, breathing report view, because again, change happens so quickly that, this data is subject to change daily, weekly, monthly. So what you're able to do is use the web portal again as that view. So if I wanted to look in and see, what applications failed on my latest, test, I can drill down, I can get right to the root cause analysis. So not only just a failure, but where exactly that failure occurred. You can see here, this pipeline, it was able to install correctly on that new environment. However, when I go to test that same core component that was working previously, something's going on here, right? And then I can go back, I can start to play the video back and start to capture exactly where that failure did occur. So the next area that I'm going to talk about is application modernization as well. So in our use case here, we looked at a simple things. I'm just going to switch over views quickly here. So we looked at a couple different workflows there in terms of that operating environment. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at application modernization. So, at the same time, and again, part of the value of the Rimo3 platform is it doesn't just have to be one OS to one OS. Why not look at, modernizing those applications at the same time? And that's what we're looking at here. So what I'm showing is the ability for Rimo3 to automatically determine if those applications are suitable candidates for MSIX packages. Now, in order for us to accurately determine if those packages are suitable candidates, we're automatically, or attempting rather, to automatically convert them into MSIX. And one of two things happen after that attempt. It either passes or it fails. Again, if it passes, fantastic. If it fails, we're going to grab that error code and show you exactly where it failed in that conversion process so you can make informed decisions. Is it possible to remediate this application? Do I need to retire this application? Am I looking for an alternate packaging mechanism for this application? Again, this is all done pre-production way ahead of time so that you have this data to action off of. Now, if it does convert, what we automatically do is detect that and then we run a post-conversion analysis against that newly created package. And this, we're seeing a trend that this is, somewhat of a blind spot, if you will, where customers that are just beginning their journey on modernizing their applications to MSIX, they're laser focused on how many applications or what percentage of their application portfolio can successfully be converted into that MSIX container, right? The blind spot being is those are two distinct, right? Just because it converts doesn't mean that it's going to function. So that's the reasoning behind that post-conversion intelligent smoke test. So again, if it passes, we capture that. And if it fails, we tell you exactly where it failed in that post-conversion test. And here we can see both executables that we identified, they're failing, and then we'll give that reason why. And again, the video playback or the static screenshot analysis to complement that. The other part to note as well is that if it does successfully pass that MSIX conversion, what we allow is the retrieval of production-ready modernized MSIX packages directly out of the platform. And this can be done via, what I'm doing here, just downloading these ad hoc through the console, or this is a very common use case for a RESTful API to automatically pull those out. Because again, there are other phases in the overall application lifecycle. So again, we can leverage the API to pull those out and then hand those off to the next phases. Now, an exciting announcement from Rimo3, which we will be releasing in our early July release with a big announcement coming at the end of June, is we're introducing our integration to Microsoft Intune. So if you recall at the beginning of the presentation, when we were talking about importing applications, we talked about that input mechanism being SCCM. What we're releasing is the ability to export these applications after they've been analyzed, after they've been packaged to MSIX directly into Microsoft Intune. So if you are currently managing an SCCM deployment, you are investigating, exploring how to move that from Intune. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We have a very compelling story there because we can take all of that technical debt, all of that years of logic that SCCM has built on top of those applications, and we can modernize those and help you modernize those to get them into a more modernized management plane, such as Intune, specifically if you're looking at Cloud PC or Windows 365, etc. So we're very excited about that. Again, don't hesitate to reach out for deeper details on that particular subject. I'll go ahead and pause there for a moment, just make sure there's no outstanding questions in the chat.
No, I don't see any new questions. I definitely see this as being a great platform, like you said, from a application testing perspective, right? And I've been on the side of having to go through that manual process of installing applications. It is very time consuming, definitely prone to error, right? Going through these tests, the time savings and just the intelligence you guys have built in this platform is it's very impressive. Like you said, being able to also modernize those and be able to integrate, plus with the integration of Intune, so you can now have yet another way to deploy, these applications from an MSIX perspective.
Absolutely.
Definitely great.
I appreciate that feedback. The other item I'll note on the Intune is it's not just MSIX. So for those that are familiar with Intune, we have this conditional logic. The conditional logic will be built in once we release the integration, where if that application for whatever reason isn't a fit for MSIX, we'll be able to either deliver it, export it into Intune as an encrypted MSI or a .win.intune file. So it's very, very exciting, and we'll save a tremendous amount of time, and specifically with new adoption of technology, right? There's always a big learning curve there. If you currently are on SCCM, your in-house expertise is on SCCM, right? There's some time that's needed in order to get that same comfort level and again, expertise on those new platforms.
As far as the applications, I know you kind of mentioned this earlier, but the applications that going through that process of either integrating with SCCM and pulling from there, or uploading MSIs, is there anything from that standpoint, or any specific requirements for those applications to be supported? I know you had the manual process too, right? Where you can essentially initiate batch files and things of that nature, PowerShell scripts. Is there any other specific requirements or that customers need to be aware of as far as the application, like application real estate they're looking to test?
Yeah, great. Another great question. There's one requirement for anything that is not, so let me back up. So there's SCCM. If those applications exist in SCCM, they're being deployed silently already. That's one of the feature sets of SCCM. So if we take SCCM out and we look at the other onboarding mechanisms that Rimo3 supports, there is a requirement for anything that's non-AppV or MSI. So these are, for example, the PowerShell deploy packages of the world, the setup.exes, they could be install.cmds, right? .bat files. The only requirement that Rimo3 has there is that those applications must be able to be installed silently. The reason for that is our entire process, as you saw, is automated and unattended. Therefore, we need to have that installation automated and unattended. So if it's a setup.exe, a commercial application, the majority of times those come with, standard switches /S, if you will, just providing examples of what we required.
Yeah, great.
Great question. Great. So I'm going to show one more use case here as part of the product demonstration, right? So we've done our analysis. What we can see is that, right, we're looking pretty good, pretty healthy for our application state, right? And I switched over, and this was just using at Windows 10 to Windows 11 21H2, right? Fantastic, 91%, right? We've learned, we've provided, informative data. We can, move to Windows 11 with ease, 91%. That's fantastic. Now, the use case that I'm presenting here is, well, what happens now when we need to change that Windows 11 environment? 22H1, right? Well, since we've invested all of the initial effort within onboarding and importing the applications, sure, we're going to have application churn, right? Ultramon may get updated. I just reinitiate that automated pipeline, right? I may introduce net new applications, right? A new Vital application gets introduced into the environment, no problem. Again, rinse and repeat, reinitiate that automated pipeline. Now, when I want to change the operating system, I have already done all of the quote unquote legwork. These are living, breathing representations in Rimo3. So now when I want to look at suitability analysis, let's say for 21H2, that now becomes a click of a button where then I go and I point Rimo3 towards that newly updated operating system, or another example could be a Vital patch to that current operating system. I go there and then I just rinse and repeat. I rinse and repeat the automation pipeline. And what that does is it supports for that day-to-day operational change management, right? So we can think of all of the different types of changes that get introduced, right? Again, I've probably talked about it a lot, those major Windows upgrades, right? It could be a feature release to Windows. It could be a CU, a security patch. It might not even be on the operating itself. You may be rolling out a monumental GPO update. That will drastically or could drastically affect those applications. Another great use case is if you're exploring switching antivirus providers, right? That could, again, potentially impact a tremendous percentage of the application portfolio. So the point being is that after that initial import or onboarding of your application portfolio, the ability and the ease to determine any impact to any change becomes a lot simpler and a lot more automated into your application lifecycle management process.
How quickly do the new target OSs, as a new operating system is released, how quickly are we able to select the newer operating system?
As soon as they are available in Microsoft's marketplace, we read that in real time.
Nice.
And if you have other mechanisms, like if you're taking VHDs and you're, putting them through the marketplace as well, you may have access to a beta or preview build. That's fine too. As long as it gets up into the marketplace, we're reading that essentially in real time, and we can pull down those images.
Okay, great.
Great questions. Great questions. So in terms of the demonstration, that's what I had planned. I do have a closing slide, but I'll provide the opportunity again for any more questions or comments or generalized feedback before I show my last slide and then pass it back over to you, Randy.
Sure. I just had one other question. So on the performance aspect, I know you mentioned, you guys are looking at performance, comparing it to previous. Are you guys looking at, and is that looking at performance of the application during installation, or actually of the application executing after the installation? Just to kind of clarify that.
Yeah, another great question. All of the above.
Okay.
So you'll see in the pipeline here, or the sequence rather, if I go to my performance, this is what it looks like when we're testing that one component of the application. This is what it looks like when we're installing the application.
Got it. Okay, very good.
And again, depending on the complexity of the application, right? This Premium Insights in my demo environment, somewhat of a simple app, but if you're supporting the AutoCADs of the world, the Adobe suites of the world, you're going to see a lot longer sequence overview and a lot more detailed data naturally, because those applications are more complex and have the availability of more data to extract.
That's great.
Great questions.
You guys are constantly adding, and innovating and adding new features, functionality. Like I said, I've been on the other side of application testing, going through the manual, process, and it's really a bear, right? I mean, there's a lot of unknowns, and really, you go through this installation process, and you try to mimic the install and try to validate the application works, but in reality, it's a best effort, right? And so having something that's automated, that's doing this deep, intelligent analysis, looking at things like performance, that's a game changer. So definitely for, like you said, all of those sort of use cases, the migrating from operating system to operating system, right? Maybe Windows 10 to Windows 11, or for those Citrix VMware customers that are looking to upgrade their underlying, OS for their applications, real estate as well. In your example, moving from 2012 R2 to Server 2022. This is a no-brainer.
Yeah, we certainly agree, right? I think we're introducing into the market really the first time the opportunity to automate your entire application portfolio, right? Traditionally speaking, we know how it all works. You handpick your high visibility apps and maybe you test those, right? Or you get around to testing them. You just can't fit that into into a day's work, right? Again, people have other core responsibilities. The other thing that it's providing the opportunity to is, again, in that proactive approach for application lifecycle management. A lot of the times, traditionally, we're forced to test, right? Because something potentially goes wrong, or the directive strategic initiatives we're mandated to get on this patch level to reduce our cybersecurity insurance, et cetera, et cetera. But again, within Rimo3, we're now providing the ability to make data-driven decisions on where you can go. Not where you think you can go, but here are the best ways that you can go. And this is built off of data, again, built off of actual data from the testing versus industry analysts or what competition is doing, et cetera, right? It gives that organic wealth of information of your application portfolio.
And the other benefit I see too is, you mentioned AppDNA. I used to use AppDNA as well, and it was just the complexity setting it up, and like you said, it was just that whole entire process. All that's changed. You guys providing this is a cloud-based service, right? I'm uploading these applications, running through these smoke tests. It's just much easier from an onboarding perspective as well as from a testing perspective. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fundamental difference, right, from AppDNA to Rimo3 is, I mentioned, is that static analysis versus the dynamic analysis, and
Right.
bring that down a level. With AppDNA, we never tested those applications, right? We matched data against data. Essentially took an operating system ISO, turned it into an MSI, and compared that MSI against an application MSI, right? Within Rimo3, that's part of our secret sauce and its patented IP is we're physically testing these apps each and every time,
Right,
in a fraction of the time. So it's very exciting stuff, or at least we think so.
So one last question, at least on my side, from a licensing standpoint, right? How are you guys licensed? And that's probably a question a lot of our attendees.
Sure.
That would, Randy, I'll take that, or Josh,
Okay.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
So sure. We are actually licensed by users. So however many users you've got within an organization, we do licensing very similar to a lot of other technology, a lot of other vendors. So it's user-based pricing.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Any other questions from the attendees? Otherwise, I guess, Josh, if you want to go ahead and throw your last slide up and you can kind of speak to that. I'll monitor the chat window in case we have anything else.
Sure. So, and again, I wasn't able to see the chat, so hopefully we got some good participation there to make an exciting draw within the wheel of names, which I think we're all excited for. But we would also like to propose a post-webinar incentive challenge, and what we're offering is a $50 Amazon gift card to the first participants today who schedule a meeting with XenTegra Meeting Maker within 2 weeks of today's webinar. And simply to do that, you can email marketing@XenTegra.com, the email address here on the screen. And the only caveat there is we're restricting it at 2 participants from the same company. So again, your chance to win a $50 Amazon gift card by scheduling a meeting with XenTegra Meeting Maker within 2 weeks. Again, that email's there. Perhaps someone could cut and paste or put that email in the chat as well for the attendees if they have access, so they can cut and paste so there's no spelling errors. We don't want to miss any opportunity to meet with the participants today. And then, of course, as well, any other inquiries around what you've heard today, any other additional questions, here's some Rimo3 contact email addresses as well. And of course, please don't hesitate to reach out to us for any other of those inquiries. And with that, I'd like to thank our partners XenTegra for hosting it and assisting, and all of the participants today.
Yes, thank you, Josh. I just wanted to note that we did a little bit of a raffle, and Asif, thank you to your questions that you put in the chat. So you are the winner of today, the Amazon gift card. So Rimo3 will be in touch with you very soon to send that gift card over to you. And thank you all for participating. We appreciate it. And just let us know if you have any more questions.
That's great. I appreciate it, guys. Appreciate Rimo3 joining us today, giving us that overview. Like I said, if there's anyone, any of the attendees that wants any more information, feel free to reach out to XenTegra or to Rimo3. We'd be glad to, or happy to assist you any way we can. So with that, appreciate Rimo3. Thank you for joining today. Definitely a pleasure. It was great information for myself as well. And appreciate all the attendees joining as well. Definitely be on the lookout for next week as we have another webinar Wednesday. Go check out our events calendar and be sure to register there as well. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. Thanks, everybody.